think if we have all of the sort of the panelists up here at the front, what we can do is we can get everyone to ask you some questions. So, yeah. It's not a competition, Richard. Okay, right. So we've got some questions from the floor for one down here.
So you're talking about voluntary carbon trading schemes resulting in trees being planted. But say if we do actually, if this does go extensively, wouldn't this result being like say trees being planted in places where they're not supposed to grow? Wouldn't this like lead to negative environmental effects, like maybe on species shooting grassland if that grassland starts being turned into tree plantation?
True, that is another question. That the fact that we propose, I'm not saying this environmental economists propose that you plant tree and you offset carbon from the atmosphere, but this is what has been going on. A market emerged in Australia and also some other parts of the world where people plant trees. They think if we plant trees, that the carbon that we emit in the atmosphere is going to offset. But this has other consequences also. Also scientifically this has been proven recently that if planting tree, you also emit carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It could be harmful to the atmosphere as well. This is why I say there's uncertainty, scientific uncertainties. But the problem is, what we try to estimate is, given all these facts and figures there, how much society is willing to pay, willing to spend to combat climate change, which is not going to happen at the end. Maybe climate change is not going to get combated at all. But then again, what we try to estimate is the benefit, how much society values this.
I think Richard wants to say something, and do you want to say something as well? And then her question. Yeah.
I just want to add something really quick about offsets. Say this is. Okay. Say this is our emissions today, and we're told they should be down here. There are some really cheap, easy ways to get from here to here, and they include things like investing in renewables, planting trees, ending deforestation, etc. Right? There's cheap, easy ways to get down here. The problem with the offset approach is that it says to people, it's okay to grow this because we can then help you offset it. And we don't get anywhere. Right? If we actually want to reduce CO2 emissions, we need to do all the things that Sonia was just talking about instead of doing more bad things. And the fun part for the airline industry is to say, hey everyone, double the number of flights, triple, quadruple, it's fine, because we can offset. And yeah, in some absurd sense we can offset, but as a society, we're actually giving up the cheapest, easiest, best ways to achieve reduction so that we can come up with some apparently morally justifiable way to maintain the status quo. So it's a cheap way to morally justify the status quo, it just won't help.
Hannah, did you have something to say? Okay, question.
You guys all seem pretty knowledgeable in environmental economics. It's probably pretty obvious, but I just wanted to ask you what you guys studied and what you're doing now.
I studied exactly what you're studying. I did my degree here at ANU in Human Geography and Human Ecology, and I also studied economics because I was really interested in the kind of issues I'm talking about now. How do we use economic tools and way of thinking for addressing some of the really critical environmental issues? And then I did a master's in environmental management and now my PhD.
I did my undergrad and 2 master's degree in mainstream economics. Now I'm doing my PhD in, this is my PhD thesis topic. So it's in environmental economics I'm specializing, but my area, to be more specific, is the stated preference technology. Non-market valuation is my area of specialization.
Did an economics degree, PhD in economics. I did some environmental economics in my undergraduate degree, which I found interesting. My PhD had nothing to do with it. From my point of view, most of the economics of the environment are pretty simple, really. It's about understanding how complex systems work. There are some simple things you can learn about that. So I have a pretty straight economics degree. Really everything I've just talked about is how markets work and how better and worse policy is designed. and through some political analysis into it as well, because economists don't run the country. Don't believe for a minute economists run the country. Kevin Rudd's not an economist, John Howard's not an economist, Wayne Swan's not an economist, Peter Costello's not an economist. Economists do not run the country. They're very useful sometimes, they can really help you. But the idea that Australia is run by economists, I think the language of economics is used by people who do run the country to keep people out of certain debates. Right, if you've got a big economic modelling exercise and a whole bunch of words people don't understand, you're not going to get shouted down as the minister. But that doesn't mean that there isn't some very simple economics underpinning most of what's going on. So I don't think it's all or nothing. I think knowing a bit of economics is very useful.
Can I say something to that? And in that, I absolutely agree with Richard. Because a lot of the debates use economic terms, it's very useful having some economic knowledge and economic background. If anything, just to challenge. Never be afraid to challenge an economist because they might use jargon. Often I actually don't know what they're talking about. They have a very, no, I shouldn't say something like that. They have a very superficial understanding of what they talk about.
As a question up here.
I just have a question about carbon trading scheme. Assuming there's a set number of permits, what's to stop? With a set number of permits, the price will be driven up by companies wanting permits. So what's to stop a company like BHP driving up the price and getting a monopoly on all permits?
Nothing. And arguably there'd be nothing wrong with them doing that, although I'd argue that once again that's a reason for not giving away free permits. Because if you give free permits to a company, you've given them effectively a financial asset. Right? You've given them this sort of bit of paper that has a financial value to people. And they can trade them, and they're encouraged to trade them with anyone they want. So if for some reason between BHP and Alcoa, they wanted to buy out all the emission permits in Australia so that they could continue producing, very emission-intensive metal products. Well, that would mean that people who bought their metal products off them were willing to pay very high prices for that stuff, and people who are buying other things that used to, that involve pollution, weren't willing to pay high prices for that. So, if a lot of big polluters wind up owning a lot of assets that allow them to pollute, so be it. I just wouldn't give them away to them for free. But the whole point of the emission trading scheme is that the permits will wind up in the hands of the companies that need them the most. Because what a lot of companies will do is say, why would I want to buy an emissions permit for $20 a tonne when I can make my staff turn their computers off before they go home? Right, the real value of an emission trading scheme is it forces companies to see what the financial cost of continuing to pollute is. And when a manager has to go and buy permits to cover the inefficient behaviour of their employees, they're going to work a lot harder to drive that down. So, but yeah, ultimately permits will wind up in the hands of the companies that are willing to pay the highest price for them. And that's almost inevitably going to be the aluminium industry, the airline industry, some elements of BHP, not all. And yeah, they won't own all of them, but that's where a large slab of them go, and petroleum.
Okay, we've got a question if they're there, and then give the next.
Okay, I was just wondering, for how long has economics been the basis of our society, and when will we see a change in that kind of economics that we were discussing? Did you understand?
Yeah. No,
We're all just looking to each other, I think.
I think it's Stone Age, actually. One of the things that I was really interested, what interested me about economics when I was, thinking about my career is that really economics is about, to me, it's about how we produce and use resources and how those resources are distributed throughout society. And so, since society began, the way we interact with each other, the way we meet our basic human needs is about how we use resources and how those resources are distributed. So in that sense, we've had economics in our society forever, and we will always have it forever. I think maybe what's motivating your question, you're probably talking about the type of economics that we refer to as capitalism. Yes. And really that started, I suppose, with the Industrial Revolution, maybe probably in the call that mercantile, so about